So the question inquiring minds want to know, is it a hidden gem or a no-brainer hit hiding in plain sight? I mean, even though today's song broke the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and it claimed #1 on the mainstream rock chart, it's kind of faded into obscurity since its moment of glory, which is a huge oversight because it's one of the best songs in its genre from one of the biggest bands in the world. I mean, it came from one of the best rock albums in 1989. And get this song started out as a country western song, but this hard rock band knew that they could never get away with that. So the iconic lead singer gave it a no-holds-barred hard rock twang, which molded into a fierce power ballad that set an all-time record for the most repeated lyrics in a top 10 hit. Story's coming up next. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you are a frequent viewer of MTV's Headbangers Ball, you're going to dig this channel. Make sure that you subscribe below right now, click the big red button, and click the bell and all that so you know when our new stuff's coming out. We also have a Patreon. We're putting full interviews up there, and you can also become an honorary producer on this content. So it's time for another edition of #1 in Our Hearts. You know, we haven't done one of these in a little bit. This is, of course, the show that honors songs that were so unbelievably great they should have been #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, but for whatever reason, lack of marketing, lack of label support, whatever it may be, the song came up short. Previous episodes, we've covered You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC, Panama by Van Halen, and Pour Some Sugar on Me by the great Def Leppard. So today, we're sticking with the theme of 80s rock. I'm going to take it down just a little bit, though, to cover Aerosmith's exceptional 1989 power ballad, What It Takes. It's one of the greatest rock and roll stories ever told. We've heard it all before. They lost it all and then forged one of the greatest comebacks ever. Substance abuse, larger-than-life egos, and infighting within the band culminated in 1979 with lead guitarist Joe Perry's bitter departure from Aerosmith and then guitarist Brad Whitford's exodus as well in '81. From that point, Aerosmith steadily declined from their once exalted status as one of the 70s greatest multi-platinum rock acts. By 1984, the old lineup was back in the saddle again. Sorry, had to do it. But old issues continued to plague the band. Too much partying, too much excess, and actually, Aerosmith was deep in debt with their old label, Columbia. Their 1985 album, Done With Mirrors, that was supposed to be the big comeback. But high hopes weren't enough, and it just fell flat. Ironically, the band's first single was a Joe Perry Project re-recording called Let the Music Do the Talking. Well, the record-buying public heard the music, and they didn't like it. Done With Mirrors, that topped out at, I believe it was number 36 on the Billboard Albums chart, and it failed to yield any Hot 100 singles at all. After all the drama of the past decade, looked like maybe the bad boys of Boston were done. There's no question that Aerosmith, they had the talent to get back to the top at that point, but they needed a drastic turnaround to keep from becoming has-beens. The tipping point, everybody knows, that turned out to be the unexpected partnership with trailblazing rappers Run DMC. Together, they reworked Aerosmith's 1974 classic Walk This Way into a hip-hop rock mashup that went all the way to number 4 on the Hot 100. And the success of Walk This Way 2.0, that was just what Aerosmith needed to get their mojo back. And as the song began to climb the charts, Tyler and company committed to get into rehab and get clean. With the entire band sober, the music started to flow again. They teamed up with visionary Geffen Records executive John Kalodner, and Aerosmith employed third-party songwriters for the first time to take their next album, Permanent Vacation, to a whole other level. We've covered that in previous episodes. But collaborators like Desmond Child, who'd written for Bon Jovi and Kiss, and then veteran composer Jim Valens, who'd written with Bryan Adams for years, and many other big artists. And from that record, the results were pretty sound. But if we're being honest, it was a good album, but it wasn't a great album. Additionally, Geffen Records connected the band with a new in-demand producer, Bruce Fairbairn. Kolodner's plan was not to reconnect with the old Aerosmith audience, but it was actually to cultivate a whole new fan base from the MTV generation that was growing and wanting rock and roll at the moment. Permanent Vacation proved to be just that monster. Sold over 5 million copies in the US alone, and it featured the 3 top 20 pop hits, Ragdoll, Dude Looks Like a Lady, and Angel. And not to beat the dead horse, I mean, it was definitely one of the most incredible comebacks in rock history, but the album was a 7. I mean, it was a solid 7, but it wasn't life-changing. It did the job of taking the train wreck that was this band before and transformed them into one of the most popular bands of the late 80s. It put them back in league with the big boys like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi. But now it was time for greatness again. Something that could hold a candle to the classics of the 70s. So depending on how you look at it, Aerosmith either had nothing left to prove or everything to lose with their next album, Pump. I'm not sure how they viewed it, but there was no doubt they wanted to take things to the next level. Afterward, Steven Tyler would say, "We didn't feel any extra pressure making this one. The only pressure this time was to be less like what the record company said we should be like and more like ourselves. Like, really let it rip this time." Now, when Aerosmith returned to the studio in late 88, they were just 2 months removed from their Permanent Vacation tour. They'd barely even paused to take a breath. Re-upping with Bruce Fairbairn. They started at Rick Tinnery Productions. It was just south of Boston before moving to Vancouver, BC's Little Mountain Studio. That was in February of 89. Now, with the encouragement of John Kolodner, Aerosmith once again employed some out-of-network song doctors. Of course, the familiar faces of Jim Vallance and Desmond Child. As much as the band disliked the idea of bringing in a couple of ringers, Joe Perry admitted that it just makes it better to have other people in there sometimes. They put their slant on what they think an Aerosmith album should sound like. And it's great. They hear different things than we do. But even with a similar working arrangement to Permanent Vacation, Pump proved to be a very different beast altogether. Deeper in their sobriety, the guys were more focused than ever. And it shows on this album. I would argue that Pump is Aerosmith's best album since the 70s. And really nothing has come close since. Pump was a loud and aggressive record. Kicking it off was the fiery 1-2 punch of Young Lust and F-I-N-E. That's actually shorthand for effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. And next came the Tyler Perry collaborations, Lovin' an Elevator and Monkey on My Back. And then the haunting statement piece, Janie's Got a Gun. And together, these 5 songs arguably, they make up one of the strongest sides of an Aerosmith record ever. The album's flip side boasted several more first-rate cuts. There was Don't Get Mad, Get Even, and the other side, Don't Get Mad, Get Even. And there's today's feature and classic ballad, What It Takes. Released on September 12, 1989, Pump shipped platinum, and it garnered some of the best reviews of the band's career. It was a massive success, and it was undeniable proof that Aerosmith was here to stay. I mean, Pump is where Aerosmith really began to achieve iconic or legendary rock status for the second time. I mean, yeah, Permanent Vacation was the big comeback record, But Pump was actually great, a great record. As we continue to break down this classic, I want to recognize our sponsor, Bubs Naturals. I want to brag a little bit about Bubs. You know, Bubs Naturals is a way of life. They believe wellness is driven from the inside out. Their philosophy and execution emulates from the spirit of Glenn Bub Doherty, the fallen national hero that the brand is named after, and a passion for nature's highest quality and sustainably sourced ingredients. Bubs Naturals helps fuel people to reach their maximum potential. It's also very cool to note that 10% of every purchase goes to charity. The mission of Bubs Naturals is very simple. Feel great, do good. I've been using Bubs Naturals collagen protein for over 4 months now, and I love what the product's done for me. Hey, we all have different lifestyles and different needs, but the one common denominator is that we all want to live a better life. That's why I proudly subscribe to Bubs Naturals. They stand behind their product with a complete satisfaction guarantee. No pesticides, no gluten, no corn, no GMO. If you try Bubs Naturals and for whatever reason you don't like it, they're going to give you a full refund. To get you started, click on the Bubs Naturals link below and use our exclusive promo code for Professor of Rock viewers to get 20% off your purchase. So Pump included 4 singles: Lovin' an Elevator, Janie's Got a Gun, The Other Side, and today's featured song, What It Takes. Steven Tyler, Joe Perry, and Desmond Child are all credited as songwriters on What It Takes. Joe remembers it actually started off sounding like a country western song, especially when Steven started singing with a twang in his voice. He said, "We didn't want to write another song like Angel." And for Desmond, that's where his heart and soul is. He's into big, dramatic ballads, but we wanted to do something different. Or in other words, what they wanted was for this ballad to rock. So they obliterated the country western angle. I mean, after all, Steven Tyler was no Conway Twitty. He was a dyed-in-the-wool rock god that wanted to belt this song out of the studio. And boy, did he ever. Guitarist Brad Whitford remembered that What It Takes started out as a keyboard song, actually. But somewhere along the line, they realized that there was something special about it. So they had to approach it a lot differently from Angel or anything else that they'd done before. Part of the approach came by the way of an unconventional instrument, the accordion. Definitely not the first choice for an 80s rock band, hard rock band, but it added just the flavor that the song needed to make it stand out. Think about What It Takes. It's just such a cool song. It's got a cool vibe to it, the way that Steven Tyler sings it. Lyrically, What It Takes deals with a guy who has it bad for his ex-girlfriend. I mean, the whole song is about him trying to get over her, but he's fallen hard and he doesn't know how to do it. He sees her wherever he goes, but clearly she's moved on. He spends the song trying to reconcile this reality with the memories of them together, which honestly aren't all that good. The relationship sounds kind of toxic. I mean, consider the lines, "You spent me up like money, then you hung me out to dry." And then there's also, "It was easy to keep all your lies in disguise because you had me in deep with the devil in your eyes." Doesn't sound like a healthy relationship. But then again, it also sounds like he doesn't really care. At this point, he just wants to figure out how to forget about this girl. The lyrics, of course, also include some fun twists, including some shout-outs to other Aerosmith songs. You know what I'm talking about. "Girl, before I met you, I was F-I-N-E fine, but your love made me a prisoner. Yeah, my heart's been doing time." I love that lyric. F-I-N-E fine. I just love it. I mean, not only is it referencing another song from the album that we talked about previously. I remember, though, that my baby brother, who was 1 at the time that the song came out, he sang this part. So in essence, it was the first word he actually spelled out loud. We used to say rock isn't educational. Vocally, one of my favorite parts is how Tyler breaks down the second part of the chorus. Tell me how it is that you can sleep in the night. Love how he holds that out. Without thinking you lost everything that was good in your life to the toss of the dice. And let's be honest, how many of us 80s kids sang the wrong lyrics here? I didn't know it was toss of the dice until many years later. I thought it was saying toast of the time. What about you? Tell me in the comments what you thought he was saying. Your life to the toss of the time. And then, of course, there's this. One of the best shout-outs for an instrument to be played in a pop song ever. And according to urban legend, it was just something that Steven Tyler shouted out randomly during recording that kept it in, one of those happy accidents that happens. Ultimately, though, whether this girl is good for this guy or not, he can't get enough of her, and it's a fight to let her go. In fact, the ending emphasizes this big time. He sings the lyrics, "Let It Go," like 30 times. Which actually set a record for the most repeated lyrics on a top 10 hit at one time. And Bruce Springsteen had repeated the words, "I'm going down," in his top 10 hit from 85 over 40 times but it was spaced out. I think it's ironic that Steven Tyler sang that over and over as if he's trying to convince himself that it's possible to let it go. The band actually put together 2 music videos for What It Takes. One was culled from scenes from the making of Pump, a film documenting the band's recording process. But in my opinion, the more entertaining of the 2 features was when the band was playing in a Texas Longhorn bar. It was a nod to the song's country-inspired beginnings, although it does cut out of the repeated frenzy of Tyler singing "Let It Go, Let It Go, Let It Go." What It Takes was the 3rd single released from Pump following Lovin' and Elevator and Janie's Got a Gun. The other side would come after it, but during its 17-week run on the Hot 100 in 1990, What It Takes crashed the top 10. It actually reached number 9. Also, like I said, went to number 1 on the mainstream rock chart, which it definitely deserved. But for the purpose of this show, that's not the number 1 that we're looking for. It should have been number 1 on the Hot 100 as well. Really, Janie's Got a Gun should have been number 1, and Lovin' an Elevator. So after doing quite a bit of research, I couldn't find a single pop culture reference for What It Takes, at least in terms of media placements, which is, I guess, a little surprising. I mean, really, Aerosmith, they haven't had a lot in the way of pop culture from this period of their career. For example, Get a Grip is the same way. There are a handful of placements for Pump's other singles, Janie's Got a Gun, Lovin' an Elevator, even The Other Side. They've shown up in Family Guy and Last Man on Earth, Cold Case, Airheads, and True Crime. Even Full House, if you can believe that. He got a gun. Which is surprising to me that they didn't have more from this period, because I think Pump was their best album of the 80s. What It Takes is basically a no-show, and it's the same thing for the cover version of the song. I guess it's a hidden gem that entertainment industry has just missed out on, frankly. One that's been really undervalued. Case in point, this is a top 10 song on the Hot 100 that we're talking about here, and a number 1 hit on the rock charts, and it's one of Aerosmith's all-time best ballads. Who, by the way, are one of the biggest bands in the world. But I just couldn't let this pop culture segment go without giving you some kind of entertaining Aerosmith reference. So even though it's not a direct reference to What It Takes, I'm going to take you back when Aerosmith appeared on SNL in 1990. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about? That old Wayne's World sketch when Aerosmith shows up in their basement. It's just perfect. Of course, Wayne and Garth are completely freaking out the whole time, as we would be as well.
Okay, we had a lot of people, right? We told them that you guys were going to be on the show, right?
And then later in a Q&A with the band, Steven Tyler and Tom Hamilton go back and forth discussing the decline of Cold War-era communism.
The Stalinist-era party apparatchiks, there will be no real change in the Soviet Union.
Really funny. Especially when Hamilton starts busting out some high-end vocabulary.
There's never been a blueprint for the dictatorship of the proletariat, so there's bound to be mistakes.
Just brilliant. Incidentally, that SNL appearance probably helped Aerosmith sell a ton more copies of Pump, and it paved the way for an encore appearance in the movie Wayne's World 2. That's back when being on Saturday Night Live actually meant something and could do something for your career. Not so much anymore. So the week that What It Takes peaked at number 9 on the Hot 100, Michael Bolton was sitting at number 3 with How Can We Be Lovers? Calloway was at number 2 with I Want to Be Rich.
So don't be asking me why I wanna be rich.
Sinead O'Connor had topped the charts with her cover of Prince's Nothing Compares to You. Now, I love Nothing Compares to You.
Nothing compares to you.
But it did have a 4-week stay at number 1. I think in this alternate universe, number 1 in our hearts, we could drop Nothing Compares to You down to number 2 for just 1 week and give that top spot to What It Takes, a truly underappreciated gem that is in fact Aerosmith's greatest hit ballad, outside of Dream On. Go listen and tell me I'm wrong. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Aerosmith and What It Takes and Pump. Tell me about this album. What do you think? One of the greatest albums of the late 80s? Do you think this song deserves more recognition? Let me know in the comments. Let's have a good discussion about this. If you like this content, we have other Aerosmith installments from the 70s through the 90s. If there's anything else from Aerosmith you'd like us to cover, let us know. And make sure to become a part of this full-time, subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.